New intro. Who is this? Oh my God. Welcome to episode 193 of Empty the Bench on the Empty the Bench podcast network. Yeah, you didn't hear that weird intro anymore that I have to put together for every week. All right, welcome. That's Tom Albano. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social. You're back, by the way. Yes, thanks to Ben Crusoe last week for filling in. That was a great intro, by the way. Dom Daniel, who just joined us on our network, has been really working on our intros across this network. So thank you. You know what? I love doing those intros from back in the day, but that full disclosure, those were taking far too long to make. So
yeah, it's nice to have a little consistent intro that we can have now, and plus new music. I know we're not at 200 episodes yet, but I guess celebrate a little early.
No, it was nice, and I'm glad to kind of have that new intro, but just to get this stuff out of the way, follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Facebook, X, and Instagram. X marks the spots. We'll get to that in a second. Follow us across the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. And follow us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Last check on the update, 426 subscribers on YouTube. We're climbing our way to 500, so make sure you follow and subscribe. Also, audio platforms as well. Acast, iHeart, no longer Stitcher. Spotify, and a bunch of other platforms. So make sure you go listen to the other platforms.
Did you hear me make that mistake on Tough Enough?
Yes, I did. I was going to make the mistake. That's why I make sure I get it out of the way beforehand. Also, etbpodcast.com English for all our blogs and info. All right. We got a lot to get into this week. Also, we're testing out our new formats to stay within the hour. So we have a lot to get into. Northwestern hazing allegations update. Yes, there is some allegation updates, and they're not good.
I was going to say updates. There's actually multiple stories all in one.
Yeah. Also, the Commanders have been sold?
It is finally official. Ding dong, the witch is dead.
Yes, Daniel Snyder gone, Josh Harris in. You've probably heard that name before. We will get to it. NFL running backs hold a Zoom call, including a certain Saquon Barkley. Signed, maybe, kind of. Also, Bronny James, LeBron's son, stable out of the ICU following cardiac arrest. And yes, I'm going to attack the shit out of somebody who decided to get political about it. We'll get to that later. Jaylen Brown signs the richest contract in NBA history. 5 years, $304 million, supermax deal. We'll get to that. Also, Michael Jordan's out of the ownership game with the Charlotte Hornets. And we'll get to that situation as well. And one owner decided to not vote it down. Who is that owner? We'll get to that later.
Oh, I have a banner for that owner. But anyways, I was going to say, yes, not one, but two owners who have sold.
Oy. So, yeah. All right. Let's go. Let's start with the Northwestern hazing allegation updates. Yes. Over the last couple of weeks, we have been covering this. And I don't know, where do we want to start with this?
All right, let's begin with the first update. Let's begin with the one we planned to talk about at first before when we were doing our pre-show meeting. The other ones began to develop. I'm going to retake this from NPR. A former Northwestern University volleyball player has filed a lawsuit against the university, alleging university officials failed to properly address a hazing incident that took place 2 years ago. The player, who is identified in the lawsuit as Jane Doe 1, is the first female athlete from the university to come forward amid reports of hazing in the school's football program. So obviously I was not here last week, but over the last couple of weeks since I have been on the outs and now just all the updates have coming in. Obviously we had Pat Fitzgerald fired when we were first doing this story. Now the baseball coach has been fired. And now this volleyball player is basically coming forward and saying, basically affirming that the volleyball program has also had its share of hazing incidents. So the number of incidents and the kind of incidents are just continuing to go off over these last few years at Northwestern.
I mean, when it rains, it pours. Usually at these incidents, when one happens, you get 10 or 15 more incidents that come out. There's a cheerleading allegation out there as well. There's a lot of different things happening. I think the associate director of sports for the department is also out. I think his name was
Yes.
Tyler Jones, I think is the guy's name, the associate director of sports. And this has become from bad to worse to horrifying the way this situation has come out. And I'll say it again, like I said it last week with Ben Cruz and Phil Dan. Shut the program down. The sports department needs to be shut down. I don't understand what these colleges do not understand. It's got to go and be shut down.
All right. So the one you were talking about is the executive senior associate AD, Tyler Jones, has resigned. It didn't seem like, the way the headlines were, like it was just a normal thing, but we have to know that these incidents have played some form of part. And the other update is that the Matt McPherson, the longtime assistant coach at the Northwestern football program, is being accused of witnessing and not stopping the hazing. There's been a complaint filed against him, and the complainants, here's the catch, are not players. The complainants are two unnamed coaches who claimed that the young coaches were hazed in a manner like the players were.
This is unbelievable. I mean, this situation has gone, like I said, gone from bad to worse to horrifying. Now we're getting accusations from coaches on top of players. We're getting lawsuits all over the place. Shut it down.
And yet Schill and Greg are still here. Yes, Schill and Greg. I cannot believe that President Schill at Northwestern actually had the cojones to come out and make a statement and say, I still support Greg. I still support our current athletic director, and I am not going to fire.
So you support hazing and sexual abuse allegations is basically what he's saying.
I mean, I'm not the one putting words in his mouth, but he's saying, despite everything, I'm still... Which, by the way, as Bradley Locker and Sam pointed out when we talked to them a couple weeks ago, in 2021, there was an athletic director there that ended up getting fired over... I think they had some sort of cheerleading allegation, sexual harassment allegation.
It makes no sense. I mean, if we're going to have allegations and lawsuits, again, talked about this last week, Ben Crump, famous lawyer now, handling all these famous allegations, all stemming back to the Black Lives Matter incidents and all those situations. If he's involved, that's when you know how serious these allegations have become. If he has to get involved and go after the school and say that there's going to be 15, 20, 25 lawsuits that are going to be filed, that tells you that the school is not doing enough to handle these situations.
Yeah, basically. And I'm just trying to look around for things. So apparently, according to certain reports, Schill was only given an executive, like a summary of basically what had happened with Pat Fitzgerald and company, and that's supposedly why he only did the 2-week suspension. I mean, I will say that I just don't believe that. I feel like you had to know more than just the summary. And even if you only knew of a summary, the fact that you're only going to suspend him for 2 weeks, when we've talked about hazing incidents throughout universities in the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years, like, you were supposed to be taking some sort of stand. And that's why I kind of, the volleyballer who's suing, regardless of what the outcome is, has a point in that the university's response to these hazing allegations, be it in volleyball or in the football program, the baseball, that the toxic culture that has been developed at this university is just too much. And here's a statement, by the way, from, I think, was this July 7th? No. Okay, this is not the one. I'm just trying
I
to...
have a statement from Greg. I found that one. Read that one first. Quote, this entire situation is distressing. My heart goes out to everyone who's involved, victims, of course. But I also want to stress that we have many student athletes who do the right thing and have always done the right thing, and coaches and staff as well. As the situation evolves, we're very serious about eradicating anything that's wrong, the president and the university. Not only eradicating it, but also trying to ensure to the highest levels that nothing like this ever happens again. Well, here's the problem with that. Why aren't you stopping it when it happened?
Yeah, I was going to say, here's the problem with that. You're already in the darkest timeline for Northwestern University athletics. I don't know how worse it can get than this. But then again,
It also says Northwestern is facing 4 lawsuits from former football players over hazing and mistreatment with the program, and another from a former volleyball player. Lawsuits! Not one! Many, multiple!
And here's, by the way, the one I was looking for. These conversations took place earlier this week around, I want to say, Monday, with the Daily Northwestern. University President Michael Schill sat down with the Daily. Here were some of the statements that were made. Quote, "There's no conversation ongoing about Greg's employment. I am supporting him." Schill said he had initially only received a, quote, "raw summary of the investigation conducted by Maggie Hickey and Aaron Fox Schiff." After the Daily's report was published, Schill said he asked to look at testimony, which led to his decision to fire. And then there was some sort of correction of such about the term summary, but
Well, there's another statement as well, which I'm a little concerned about in this ESPN story as well. In addition to the anti-hazing seminars, Greg said Northwestern is ensuring that its system for anonymously reporting hazing or other mistreatment is functioning correctly. Huh? What do you mean? What do you mean that it's functioning correctly? If that was the case, why wasn't it handled?
I don't know. I feel like, just how was this not known before? And more importantly, if you've just fired 2 coaches, and 2, not just any sports coaches, the football and the baseball coach, for a toxic culture that has been created within the athletics department, and it stretches all the way to volleyball and cheerleading and other sports. How are you holding on to the athletic director? Here's another question. How are the board of directors not coming for Schill's head? How is he somehow still the president?
What about the trustees? What about the people who put the money into
Right.
the college sports? I mean, we're missing a situation here, because if it was one program of all the sports, that's one thing. You get rid of that head coach, you get rid of that staff. But it's all the sports. All of them.
And Nick, basically, you are right in saying that maybe it is best, for the sake of this program and its reputation, that there is no 2023-2024 athletic season. The problem you're going to have, and Bradley talked about this with us a couple weeks ago, is that they're a Big Ten school. The Big Ten, the NCAA, especially with one of their babies in the Big Ten, are not going to see a program shut down.
Well, they may not have a choice at this point, is basically what I'm getting at. With all the incidents that they've had, I don't care what money is involved. Money over the way the kids are being treated in the college? That's what a lot of colleges are doing. They're treating it like a professional organization. These are kids that these colleges are responsible for.
And again, it's not just one program. It is multiple athletes across multiple sports that has been going on for multiple years. Right now, this organization isn't just complete free fall. It is I can't even use the circus comparison. It is a nightmarish, ghoulish kind of place right now. This is really, as I kind of alluded to, the darkest timeline in Northwestern University, let alone Northwestern University athletics history.
There's one more statement that Greg said, which I'm confused by it. Okay. So he said, quote, "My background as a former student athlete and a leader, it's in times like these where I'm the most effective, to be honest." Huh?
Hold on. I shouldn't be laughing, but you know what? If you're so effective as a leader, I mean, it doesn't look good on you right now. If you are the example of what an effective leader is, then, oh my God, the world is doomed, because the amount of effective leaders out there, in my eyes, are just slim to none at this point.
By the way, they launched an investigation on November 30th, and this is just being figured out now. Why do these investigations take so long? I don't understand this.
Well, I mean, Nick, the only defense I can have of investigations going so long is look what's been founded. It's not just in one athletic department. It's across one athletic program, I should say. It's across the board. Like, this is just a really horrendous look for the university, and it just does not seem like it's the snowball rolling down the mountain. It goes from a snowball and it goes into a big, you know,
Or it's
there's a
like that movie. What's that movie I always try to refer to all the time where uh they're trying to avoid the traps as the thing is
Indiana Jones.
This is Indiana Jones. You're trying to avoid all the traps as the ball is following you.
Except the difference is that the traps have hit you, and you're just continuing to go on through. The poison darts have hit you. You've been run over by the boulder, and yet you somehow are still going through. Like, we're okay.
It's just like, nope, that's hitting me. Nope, I'm good. I'm just going to keep getting up and running. No problem. I mean, we should have known right away that the Fitzgerald suspension for 2 weeks was an issue as soon as that came out. Because people are like, oh, wow, investigation for hazing. Head coach gets 2 weeks unpaid. Huh?
2 weeks, give me a break.
Like 2 weeks is like going on a vacation and coming back. I mean,
but of course, I expect nothing more to happen now because, again, as you kind of said, it's all about the.
And the other part, it says Greg participated in the call to inform Fitzgerald that he's been fired. What? You're not handling the situation, but you were in the call that said that he was fired?
But again, did he actually say something, or was he just sitting there looking pretty?
Well, it says Greg participated in the call to inform Fitzgerald that he'd been fired, but he would not reveal the details. Well, I get that because that's a privacy situation, but
right. Well, it doesn't help when Fitzgerald is also trying to lawyer up and sue you guys. Look at you guys. You guys have lawsuits all the way up the wazoo.
The problem is that eventually is going to get settled. He's going to make like half that contract.
I agree. I agree on what you think the outcome is, but it's not a good look when you've got everybody coming at you. Because it's a clear indication of you done goofed.
Right. Yeah. I'll throw one. Yeah. I'll throw one more. So the opening day is September 3rd in Jersey to face Rutgers. Do we see that happening?
Like I said, you would think this is a situation where the NCAA would get involved, but this is one of its biggest conferences. It's Big Ten. They're not going to do anything.
I don't know, but apparently.
And what's the other thing about this?
Yeah,
the fact that and it's good that a school is trying to, fix the wrongs. But obviously, things have been so screwed up. Where is the NCAA in all of this?
You think the NCAA is going to get involved? I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but they have much bigger fish to fry, which includes expanding other conferences. You think they're going to get involved in this? They should, but they're not. And Greg, I'll finish off on this. Greg said that he thinks the team is handling the situation, quote, as best as they possibly can. Huh?
I guess the other point I want to make, just to wrap things up, is let's say they do shut the university program down. Now, I know some athletes have been allowed to already enter the transfer portal, and we've already seen a number of athletes from Northwestern transfer out. But if you shut the whole university program down, I mean, what happens to those who don't transfer out? Do they now lose that year of eligibility? It's not fair on the athletes when there's just been an absolute mishandling of management. You know what? Should I just use the example, the extreme example I used with you in that pre-show meeting? Okay, so let's say, I don't know if they actually have it, but let's say it's freaking NCAA table tennis. And if table tennis has no sort of issues like this, but obviously the athletics program has such a hellhole right now. That's the truth. It is a hellhole right now at this university. So let's say they don't transfer out because of limited opportunities because it's table tennis.
By the way, they do have a table tennis team.
Oh, really?
I just looked it up. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. But my question is now, let's say, obviously not every university has a table tennis team. So limited opportunities, so they choose to stay. Do you now have to grant them that extra year of eligibility? I think you don't have a choice in that matter.
Well, you and I were discussing this because we weren't sure exactly what they would do. I think you have to give them an extra year of eligibility. It's not their fault that this situation happened. I mean, except for the assholes and the seniors that did this whole thing, they don't deserve anything. But anyone who, say, just got in there as a freshman or a sophomore, that you have to grant them eligibility.
Right, I was gonna say treat it like a redshirt season.
You kind of have to. It's not fair to the athletes. They didn't do anything to deserve this. The school's negligence should not be on the athletes.
Right, and you can talk about, those who participated, and yes, but at the same time, when you are somebody like a Pat Fitzgerald or the baseball coach, and you are just allowing things to happen, again, it goes back to what we talked about at Bradley. As much as you can want to say, "Oh, they were the athletes; they were the ones who did the actions." You know who it actually falls on? It falls on the leadership
Oh
because you
yeah,
allowed this thing to happen.
100%. I mean, that's not even close. It's all responsibility of the school, and they got to figure this out. They have to let the students walk if they want to walk.
All right. Let's go on to a happier story. Now, granted, this involves a rival team of, a division rival of my favorite football franchise. But you know what? I think the NFL is just so much better. Just, it feels more like heaven, which if you're a Washington Commanders fan, like, obviously we hate on each other during the season, but this is the point where I want to give you a hug.
I
Dan
mean,
Snyder is gone.
I could sum this up in one sound.
Yes. Woo!
So yeah, $6 billion sale of the Commanders from Dan Snyder to Josh Harris. You're probably wondering, "Whoa, I've heard Josh Harris before." Yes, he owns the Devils, he owns the Sixers, and part of that group is Magic Johnson. Which, by the way, no one's talking about this, but Magic Johnson has made quite the portfolio for himself. So,
Absolutely.
and he was actually the one that spoke at the event.
I mean, he already had quite the portfolio as a player, and now as his post-playing career, he is an example, Nick, of a player who goes on to be in some sort of management role in sports, in this case, part owner, that has actually turned out pretty well.
Except for the Lakers, but I won't hold that against him. But
He does have an NBA championship, technically.
well, yes, but he was not a great executive.
I know you don't count it.
No. I wasn't even going there. I'm just saying, like, he wasn't the best executive with the Lakers, but he's a good owner. He knows how to be a businessman. I'll give him that. But so this situation happens. All Washington Commanders fans, well, they might be Commanders temporarily, but that's another story for another day. But so Harris-led group is in. Snyder is out. $6 billion later after buying it for like 780 or 800 million. It's funny how that works, right? I mean, he buys in and then he's an asshole, but he walks away with $6 billion. So he's fined $60 million for the cheerleader sexual harassment scandal, largest fine in NFL history, by the way.
Yes, largest fine in NFL history, but at the same time, I'm still gonna call it some sort of slap because look, he gets fined. That's like 1% of his net worth. It's not much at the.
So basically,
right, and also, and also think about it. Think about everything that he has done, all the lines he has crossed, and you harass all these women. You basically, you know what? I'll just flat out use the term. You pimp them out to all your boosters and supporters. And look what happens. You just get fined $60 million. It is the return of two checks Goodell.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't care. $6 billion later, he's basically go hide under a rock for the rest of his life. Yep, Roger Goodell strikes again. I mean, he doesn't care. He won. By the way, we have to give Roger Goodell some credit.
Yeah, because you know what? And the vote to transition from Snyder to Harris was a unanimous vote. So at this point, it's like, you know what? It's like of all the things that we can hold against, Roger Goodell. I mean, technically, yes, we should because, I mean, second straight year where we're dealing with somebody who has all these sexual misconduct claims against them that the NFL basically is, that I guess the Deshaun Watson one is also a whole bunch of circumstances with the freaking court ruling and whatnot. But I think at this point, I'm willing to take the $60 million fine and the little slap on the wrist for the sake of he has sold the group and he is out of our heads forever. Like, that's the more important thing here. He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. And then you have guys like Magic Johnson who are ready to turn this around with Josh Harris, who probably has more money than you and I will ever see in our lifetime.
And I'm more confident I mean, I shouldn't be saying this as a Giants fan, but as somebody who's on the outside looking in on, sports news and giving analysis, I'm more confident in a group led by Josh Harris and Magic Johnson to turn this franchise around. Because let's be really honest, before once Dan Snyder got in there, the reputation of the Commanders quickly went both on and off the field. And you consider that the only times really that the Commanders won the NFC East while he was there was when the NFC East sucked. Like you had that 2020 season. I think you had one or two seasons they won when RG3 was there. Like really, the Commanders haven't had this. It's been the NFC East since Dan Snyder has gone there has been a pure Eagles, Cowboys, or Giants division.
You should pull that sound effect that you and I were talking about also, because Bruce Allen, I think, has a lot to say about this situation right now.
Oh, yes. You know what? I can actually, and you know what? It actually works, Nick. It actually really works because I do believe in the culture now.
The culture is actually damn good.
It is actually damn good now.
Thank you, Bruce Allen. I think you were actually right for a change. But you know what? I'm happy for the Commanders. Well, who knows? Again, who knows? They might change the name again of this franchise.
Honestly, on one hand, I want to laugh because, third name change in such a short time. At the same time, you want to wash off.
They want to get rid of the ick.
Yeah, the grim. You're right. The ick. That Dan Snyder, the grime, the disgusting germs of Dan Snyder away from this team.
Now, will they actually go out and buy players? That's the nicest way I could say it, I guess.
That's another thing. Will they spend in free agency?
Josh Harris will.
Will they have to deal with the when they're doing the name? Will they have to deal with the trademark hog again, or is he going to back down now that finally Dan Snyder is out of the picture?
There were actually like legal gambling odds for what the name was going to be again.
I read those off to you.
Oh, you were the one that read that to me. Okay. And they said the Washington football team was actually up there again at high odds. I was like, no, don't do that again.
Well, what made me laugh was the idea. Now, on the odds, this is listed as 100-1, but they were talking about it on, it's Your Native Tree, 5 points on the Clickbait Sports sides. I love those.
Yes.
I love those guys. They said, imagine if in the biggest FU to Snyder, they go back to Redskins. Because you know what? They got that name from the trade from, we talked to him, Martin, the trademark hog.
Oh, Martin McCauley. Yeah.
Yeah. But then they didn't trademark the name Commanders by the time they announced the name. So good job on you again, Snyder.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that's the least of the issues. I just think that fans will now eventually come back out again, knowing that Daniel Snyder's not making the money off of all this anymore. Now,
by the way, for the next mascot team name thing, Football Club was second on 7-1 odds. Spartans was number 1, 6-1. Red Hogs third at 8-1. The Magicians at 9-1. The Armada at 10-1.
They're not really good, to be honest.
I like some of these more 12-1 odd names. You got the President's Ambassadors, the Brigade.
I like the Ambassadors. That's the one I like.
The Red Tails, the Senators. Hey, we can get the Washington Senators football team now that we've had a couple of baseball franchises that were named.
I just feel like it would be such an insult to baseball if they did that.
I know. Well, here's the figure. It's Washington Defenders is there. But you know what the problem with that is?
Yeah, that's the XFL team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're going to have to talk to The Rock about that one.
Be careful about that. But I don't know. I'm happy for the team. I'm happy for the fans because now they have a legitimate owner in place who cares and wants to actually do things the right way. So hopefully guys like Magic Johnson and Josh Harris can turn this around and will actually want to talk to the media because the way Dan Snyder was, he basically bought up the media so that he could control the narrative of what was going on in Washington.
And you think of all the different issues that fell under Dan Snyder, the fact that you had the cheerleader incident, the fact that he clashed with the Native Americans over the Redskins name, which I get goes to multiple sports, but you could have done some goodwill with them. You could have done some goodwill. Obviously, he didn't. I feel like somebody like a Dan Snyder or Josh Harris would do more goodwill. I mean, you think we talked about Martin McCauley, the trademark hog. Remember what he said about the Commanders when he tweeted out about he would give up the name if they had done some form of
Charity
donating.
work. Yeah.
Right.
And he
And
said no.
Right. And I feel like somebody like Josh Harris and Magic Johnson would say yes to that.
Oh, well, first of all, Magic Johnson is such a public spotlight that if he said no to something like that, that would hurt his reputation like that. Like if he's all over TV.
I'm just saying with all that plus, yeah, I mean, remember when the stadium that stadium was leaking let's say sewage?
Yes.
Like they could do stadium work, they could do charity work. Like dance, it's going to take a while. I said this when we first did the break. It is going to take multiple years for them to clean up the image, but
they need a new stadium too.
Right, but I think Harris and Johnson are the guys to do it.
I hope so. I really hope so.
All right, one more NFL story. Zoom call was held. The running backs were all holding a Zoom call. So the likes of Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs,
Austin Eckler.
They were all on a little Zoom call discussing about the, let's face it, depressed market, about the position. Obviously, you've heard the stories about how the average pay less than the kickers, their career short, only 3 years, and basically all that came out of that Zoom call. I think Nick Chubb even said it, that unfortunately, because of the circumstances with the CBA between the last negotiation between the NFL and the NFLPA, that there's not much they can do, unfortunately.
There's not much they can do. By the way, the cap number, the tag number, I think is 10.1 million for running backs. So that's part of the problem. But excuse me, that, and we'll get into the Saquon Barkley situation. But if you look at the running backs, it's like a car crash waiting to happen every time they run into the pile. Like, and I hate to say that, but it's true. It's the most physically crushing position out of everything.
Here's the thing. On one hand, I feel bad because you think about the running backs. Like, think about those names that were in the Zoom call. Now, obviously, Christian McCaffrey's got his contract.
So does Nick Chubb.
So does Nick Chubb. But you think about the Saquon Barkleys. You think about, I know Austin Eckler agreed to certain terms, like he got a little extra pay, but it'll be $2 million of incentives, and then he gets to be a free agent next season. But still, you got to feel bad, feel like maybe he's a little underpaid. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, like Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard didn't get a deal. He got to play under the tag.
He was happy to take the tag because he knew that his money and his depressing market was going to go down. So he took the tag.
Well, also, this is an opportunity for him because it's the first year he doesn't have to deal with Zeke.
Yeah, so he's going to get full reps. But just looking at this running back situation, first of all, the Giants, I think, did the right thing.
There, because I mentioned my favorite YouTuber and Tree before, and I think honestly he has a point. This is something that I mentioned to you in our pre-show meeting. Part of the problem is the days of the bell cow back seem to be over, and the days of the pocket passer quarterback is over. Look at Lamar Jackson. We bring up the Giants and Falcons. Look at Daniel Jones. These are guys who scramble out of the pocket and are willing to take the
abuse.
Take the abuse and go for it themselves.
And that's part of the issue. Like I think the example I used to you was Eli Manning and cement feet. Like you're not going to see that anymore. If you have a quarterback that's cement feet and can't even move a little, you're not going to get drafted out into the NFL anymore because you need guys that can move. What you mentioned before, like Lamar, or even Patrick Mahomes can move his feet, even though that's not his game, but he can do it.
He displays the ability to do it from time to time.
I mean, Tua, when he's not getting concussed, but when Tua can move, those are the guys in today's game. You have to be able to throw, and you have to be able to run for first downs.
And I shouldn't say that not everybody, the pocket passer, the era of that is pretty much that. I can't say that it's not going to be successful. Like you said, Patrick Mahomes, his game is in the passing, but you need a strong offensive line to do that. And when you're a team like, say, the New York Giants, who has had offensive line issues time and time again, that's why you need somebody like a Daniel Jones who can do the scrambling.
Right. And when you look at some of the running back market, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, was there anybody else?
Eckler.
Eckler. Well, Eckler, and what's interesting about Eckler, I think, is the VP of the Players Association, I think, also. So that's why I think he was the lead on this Zoom call. But the running back market, the teams are just not going to pay it because they need that cap space to pay the quarterbacks. Look, we just had another situation with Justin Herbert, who just made $262 million over 5 years.
Yeah, the new, once again, I call it the hot potato position, the championship that just seems to go around nonstop. And new highest paid quarterback, which again, we've talked about on this show before, Nick. I mean, yes, he's going to be the highest paid quarterback, but for how long? Because since he was the first to blink, now it brings up the question of how much is Joe Burrow going to get? Actually, you know what's funny? We mentioned Joe Burrow. Joe Mixon and Aaron Jones of the Bengals and Packers, respectively, they took pay cuts to stay with
They had no choice because they were going to get cut. They didn't take a pay cut. So it's all a matter of supply, demand, I guess, at the position. The quarterback position will always be needed. It's the most valuable position on the field, hands down, before anything else.
Now, so we talk about the Saquon Barkley. You talk about the economics of the position. He has realized that. Now, the Giants, I should say, yeah, I mean, they gave him a little more. So they gave him $11 million instead of the 10.
They gave him an extra $900,000
in incentives, right? And some incentive pay. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say this. I'm happy. Do I wish he was paid a little more? Maybe, and I only say that, Nick, because news broke before we started recording that Cole Kmet got a 4-year, $50 million deal from the Bears. I know he's a great young tight end, but
who the hell is that? That's my real opinion of that whole thing.
And everyone's saying, oh, Steele, he's going to be a top 5 tight end. You're telling me you would put Cole Kmet over George Kittle and Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews? You would put him up there with all of them?
Hell no, you wouldn't.
I know I'm probably going to get crap now from our Chicago boy and Zan, but come on.
But just looking at that, I want to put in another situation with the Giants because they were saying that I think a linebacker just got a massive deal.
I think it was Andrew Thomas.
Yeah, he got like a 4-year, $140 million or 150 million something. I was like, whoa! Like
that's expensive, but you know what? We've talked about the offensive line issues, and somebody, one of my colleagues, was actually talking with me. And we have this debate in the last couple of seasons, Nick. You say Daniel Jones you say Saquon Barkley has to prove himself. I've said in the past Daniel Jones. My colleague said this year, I think that honor has to go to the offensive line and defense.
I agree with you. By the way, the deal was 5 years, $117.5 million extension. That includes $67 million guaranteed, which is nuts.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I am also happy that Saquon's back because you know what? When the Giants signed James Robinson the other day, I was like, okay, maybe we can move on from Saquon. But honestly, now that he's here, like that's a solid 1-2. Saquon Barkley, James Robinson. Because I said when the situation with the Giants first developed, we were talking about, okay, so if we were not going to have Saquon, and it looked like we weren't going to have Saquon, then that meant that Matt Breida and the guy they drafted this year, Eric Ray, were going to be the 1-2. And I'm like, but is that really a good 1-2 to have? Like, you go from Matt Breida and Eric Ray to a year of Saquon Barkley and James Robinson, especially in a year when the Giants' schedule, which I've talked about off air, is going to be a lot tougher.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot tougher, and they're gonna have to play their asses off to get wins. But
so you're gonna need somebody like a Saquon, and you're gonna need somebody like a James Robinson. My point is, and then Josh Jacobs, I agree with you. I think he and the Raiders, they're gonna come to terms. He's going to make his way back. Now, the issue that's recently popped up is Jonathan Taylor. Now, Jonathan Taylor, if he somehow holds out, that as much as we talk about a depressed market and the running backs have no leverage, I mean, that's a really bad look for the Colts. You now have a young quarterback, first-year rookie quarterback in Anthony Richardson.
Who you just signed.
Right. You're coming off of a season, which I remember last season with Matt Ryan, that was an absolute disaster. You're in the midst of, let's face it, a rebuild, even though you're in an absolutely weak-ass division. you are going to need, all your young pieces. And Jonathan Taylor is the star of that team. If you're without him, I mean, that's devastating. And with Anthony Richardson, I mean, he's got to have the weapons. And Jonathan Taylor can, he can carry, he can receive. The days of Reggie Wayne and T.Y. Hilton receiver that team are long gone.
Yeah, they're long gone. But by the way, I would say Jonathan Taylor kind of is similar to Saquon Barkley. Jonathan Taylor had injury concerns after having a good year the year before. And the Colts are basically saying, hey, like you had a good year the year before, but you're injury prone. We're not paying you. Same thing with Barkley. Like they don't want to pay the running backs because they're injured.
Agreed. But I think the Giants, and maybe this is a little Giants fan bias in me, but I think the Giants have shown, like with the James Robinson sign, that they can work around that. The Indianapolis Colts just don't have the weapons available.
So in a sense, he's more valuable in that regard
Right.
because they really need him. So we'll see. We'll see. But the Colts are not going anywhere. Let's be real.
I know. So hopefully now we can move on and go to next month. When the NFL season kicks off next month. I mean, the preseason starts next week. The Jets and Browns are going to play the Hall of Fame game.
I mean, yeah, we have a lot to look forward to. Probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll break down what we're doing for the NFL season because we have a lot more this season. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll
All
get
right,
to it.
let's talk about some NBA headlines as we go into the last 20 minutes or so of the show. Bronny James, news developing over the last couple of days, suffering cardiac arrest on Monday, collapsing in a practice, taken to a hospital. Fortunately, he is now, as of the time we're recording, in stable condition and out of the ICU.
Yeah, so this was a significant story. LeBron James's son, like we said, in cardiac arrest, and big time prospect. Obviously, because it's LeBron's son, everyone's going
Right.
to
I
treat
mean,
it.
he's going to be, let's face it, when we went into, obviously we still got this NBA season to look forward to, but I mean, he is going to be projected was going to be the number one pick of the 2024 NBA draft.
Now, is that LeBron bias? I don't know because everyone's saying like he's getting a little more pressure put on his back because of his father, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. The issue is that people who decided to turn it political on top of it is
Yeah.
where I have a problem.
And that's the thing. We can talk all about, oh, he collapsed in practice. We could talk about, oh, he's the second USC star in the last year or so to collapse out of practice. We could talk about, oh, is this going to hurt his draft stock value or his season? But honestly, nothing like that matters in a time which he, let's be blunt, could have died.
Well, I'll read you a statistic quickly because I think you and I were talking about it. According to the National Institutes of Health, cardiac arrest caused to 450,000 deaths a year in the U.S. It's different from a heart attack, which occurs because of an artery blockage, but the heart generally keeps beating.
Right,
So
but I'm saying the most common cause of death in young athletes
is cardiac arrest.
Statistically, even before COVID, was cardiac arrest. And why do I say before COVID? Well, yeah, I'll have you have the floor on this one.
Yeah, so you and I know this. Well, you said that you saw it from a bunch of other right wingers, and I did look around. I did see that. But Charlie Arnold, who you know well from the WWE
And UFC.
days, USC, excuse me, USC. I think she did.
Both WWE, UFC. I think she's technically still with UFC as an interviewer.
Yeah, and now she's a Fox News contributor and for Outkick, which
Mhm.
is the problem here. But so she puts out a tweet after the incident happened, and I'm trying to scroll just to make sure I say here it is. So young, healthy athletes like Bronny James should not be going into cardiac arrest, ... unless ...
Making the implication that basically Bronny James had received the COVID vaccine and it was a defect from the vaccine. Now, I want to be clear on something because these right wingers, including Charlie Arnold, are going off about, well, LeBron was a big advocate of the COVID vaccine. If I'm not mistaken, Nick, the two of us and Nick Videra just 3 years ago, remember all that time we were talking about where LeBron wouldn't say if he had the vaccine or not?
He was being sketchy.
Right, and we had to pry out of him. So that is a fake narrative that those right wingers are putting up.
And let's be clear. We want nothing to do with politics on this podcast whatsoever.
I don't want anything to do with politics. I hate politics.
But
at the same
hey,
time,
go ahead.
But at the same time, when I say right wing, it's because they are. They are. Just look at their profiles.
I mean, and the reason I know this, I worked in a right wing radio station for 3.25 years. I've seen this narrative many freaking times before. If you're gonna implant a narrative, just come out and say what you're actually saying. I'm tired of this nonsense where you're trying to hide behind I almost said it, an X instead of a tweet.
An X.
That that you're trying to imply that because he took the COVID vaccine, which we don't know if he took the COVID vaccine. So that's one, you're implying something that you don't know. And you're saying, well, why is he good? I don't understand going into cardiac arrest unless, well, you don't know. So stop implying the narrative.
But also, have the research to back it up. Like we just said, there's that statistic of cardiac arrest being the cause of death in young athletes. That's why I said before COVID, this has been a thing. And thankfully, the medical staff was there very quickly within the first minute, getting him basically, some medical attention. And you just have to, like I kind of alluded to just before, you could say all you want about draft stock. You can say all you want about him and his playing. But, his health and safety come first. The fact that, my point is we should not be using this kind of incident to all of a sudden now go into some debate that's unfounded about a COVID vaccine.
This is ridiculous. And on top of it, so someone tweeted back at her. First of all, she went like viral off the scene. She was on every Fox News program.
Mm-hmm.
She was on Gutfeld.
Well, I know where you're going with this because you said that basically she's teased like the unless and just say what you want to say. She has, because she basically says in a tweet that,
well, I have it.
Yeah.
So someone tweeted back at her and said, what the hell happened to you? Did you sell your soul or something? And without even thinking about it, she quote tweeted and said, always been anti-vax, just was never able to say it out loud until now. Now, what she's referring to, by the way, is she worked at ESPN and they had a vaccination policy.
And they also have, now granted, they've been very hypocritical at times about this, but they have been very censoring about political issues on their show, which, I mean, debate that all you want, debate that with the First Take and whatnot. At the same time, it's not a surprise that Sean Ross Sapp is reporting, well, we kind of have, and they have reported about this years ago when she first left WWE, that
I saw that tweet.
Backstage were not very fond of her. And she was basically a headache.
Okay, but ever since she went to Outkick, she's become a political hack. And I use that term loosely because I say it about a lot of people.
She's gone from a headache behind the scenes like she was at WWE to just a headache in
public.
Right.
And it basically, for content's sake, she's become a headache. First of all, I don't give a shit about your whole, am I an anti-vaxxer or not? One, you shouldn't say that because that's career suicide if you say you're an anti-vaxxer. We've talked about this for 3 years. As soon as you say you're an anti-vaxxer, you lose your job for the most part.
Look at all that happened with Kyrie Irving.
Well, Kyrie Irving didn't lose his job, but I get what you mean. Well, yeah, I dealt with that headache forever. But Charlie Arnold's an idiot. I have no problem saying that, okay? Because to imply one thing and put a narrative out there, which went viral because of her, essentially. And now she's like, well, why is everybody going after me? What do you think? Why do you think they're going after you, Charlie? I'm waiting for an answer.
Who cares at this point? She's irrelevant in my mind.
Well, she lost a good job. She was at ESPN for the longest time, filling in on First Take.
But you know what? She's with the UFC, and the UFC, Dana doesn't give a crap what you say.
That's a good point. I totally didn't think about that. Moving on.
All right. Two quick stories to finish off on. Jaylen Brown. So we talked about how Justin Herbert, now the highest paid quarterback in NFL, which obviously will be opposite. But this 5-year, $304 million supermax deal for Jaylen Brown, who is now has the richest contract in the history of the National Basketball Association.
What the I mean, like, even passing Jokic at 260. I mean, Jaylen Brown is worth more than Nikola Jokic? Really?
I mean, I'm glad that Jaylen Brown got some sort of bag because he did deserve pay, but $304 million?
I mean, they already have. Why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden?
KP?
Who?
Kristaps Porzingis?
No. Why am I forgetting the young star on the Celtics? Oh my god.
Tatum?
Tatum. Thank you, Jason Tatum, who they just signed to a mess. By the way, this is totally over the top of Jason Tatum's contract by far. 5 years, $304 million. I'm trying to do the math. It's over $60 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit! An NBA athlete making $60 million a year?
You know what that means, right? The next big star, next face of the NBA, whose contract comes up, how much are they going to get?
I don't even know who would be up. I mean, Giannis has already got a contract. I mean,
Jokic already has a contract.
someone's going to make like $350 million. It's going to be a baseball contract.
Somebody's going to make $70 million a year.
These are baseball contracts now we're talking about. But at least, well, the only difference is MLB is fully guaranteed. But this is insane. Is he a good player? Yes. Is he A+ lead a team's guy? No. But this is the price you have to pay to keep somebody.
And last but not least, you and Paul talked about this on 3&D. Yes, not one, but two owner switches on this episode. The Charlotte Hornets, their sale has been approved. Michael Jordan, he is still somewhat of an owner. He has just gone from the majority to the minority owner.
Yeah, so he bought in for like 270. I can't remember the exact number I said, but it was 270. And now he's walking away with a $3 billion valuation. Good money. Good math.
Yeah, honestly, some good money that these owners are walking away with.
The one thing I will say, though, it was 29-1 in the vote. Who is the one?
Oh, where's my...
Yep. James Dolan and the Knicks were the one ownership group to vote down the move of Michael Jordan selling off.
Hey, Dolan, just focus on putting out consistently good Knicks teams like you had this year. Let's not let last season be a one and done deal, okay?
Yeah, well, I think you're asking for too much. But long story short, $3 billion valuation. I think he owned like 75 or he owned the whole team. I think he sold off like 75%, 75%. So he's going to get seven. Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, like Dan Snyder, how much the valuation of the Washington team grew, how much the valuation of the Charlotte team. It's like getting involved in sports and franchise. Do you think about how much sports franchises have basically increased in value over the last 15, 20, 30 years? Like that's a good investment.
It's not a surprise. Now you're seeing guys just investing in franchises for the investment to make money. Not that Michael Jordan needed the money by any means with the Jordan brand, but you know what? It was a failure. His ownership tenure of his career was a failure. But do you think anyone's going to say that about Michael Jordan? Do you think they're going to look at that? No, of course not.
I mean, but it's not going to affect his legacy.
It's not going to affect his wallet either. But long story short, I think he probably just said, I had enough of this shit. I'm out of here. This team's not getting any better. And I'm walking away with 75 or 80% of $3 billion. Woo! Like, yeah.
Oh, hold on. Did you say woo?
Yes.
Damn it, where is it?
Woo! Woo!
So, yes, he's walking all the way to the bank with his Jordan brand plus his $3 billion from the Hornets. So,
yeah,
it is
all
what
right.
it is.
That's going to do it for this edition of Empty the Bench. One more time, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Every episode of Empty the Bench, every episode of MMA Outsiders, Fruity Cereal, so much more. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. 426 subscribers, you said? And climbing.
Yeah, we're climbing.
Getting to that 500 goal. Thank you all for all of your support. Make sure once again, youtube.com/ETV network, especially for those of you who are listening on those audio only platforms like Acast, Spotify, and so much more. Make sure to go to our video feed on YouTube, our traditional home, and hit the subscribe button. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, go support us on the audio only platforms.
Yeah,
Make sure to go to social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and X marks the spot.
Just wait. It's going to go back to Twitter at some point. We know
I
this.
know, but I'm gonna have fun with this until it does. Damn it! So
I mean, we had a Twitter limit of 600 per day. That went away.
at ETB Sports, at ETB Network, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find our own personal social medias on the bottom here for those of you who are on the audio side. I'm at Thomas J. Albano. Nick is at N. Morgasen Radio. Don't forget to go to etbpodcast.com for all the latest about our network, all information about it, blogs from the likes of Hank and Dichter and Jennifer Kate. Shout out to them. And stay tuned because I think next week before our next episode, us and Hank from Hitting for the Cycle will be doing a trade deadline stream on trade deadline, MLB trade deadline day, August 1st, I think.
Yeah, the next time you're going to see us is after the trade deadline, so we're going to break down all the trade deadline moves when they happen. So, is Shohei Ohtani going to be moved?
Is Juan Soto going to be moved? What are the Yankees going to do? A lot of storylines to talk about with this trade deadline.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but make sure you follow along with us, and we'll bring you all the MLB trades, especially when they happen.
Yeah. So, show is now complete. Hey!
Wow, and it's under an hour.
It's about time we got to this point.
Holy cow!
All right. For Nick Morgasen, I'm Tom Albano. We'll see you next time on Empty the Bench. Take care, everyone.
See you, everybody, next week.